Welcome to Positive Philter with your host, Philip Wilkerson, a podcast that focuses on friends, family, health, and career, with a little self-help along the way. Please join me in this journey for self-improvement, and I hope what I have to share will make you a better person, thus making the world a better place. I hope you enjoy the show. I hope you enjoy the show. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's Philip Wilkerson back with another episode of Positive Philter. I'm joined by a special guest. Well, everyone is a special guest. I'm joined by one of my higher ed colleagues in the Eastern region, Eastern area, Mr. Joe Santacroce. I hope I pronounced that correct. I just call him Joe. And it's like the first time I'd really used formal last names on this. But he is a career professional at Salem State University. We've connected through Eastern ACE, which when I said is the Eastern region, kind of like that Eastern region professional development for career centers and also employers, but I definitely just say the career centers, whatnot. And we connected, we vibed. I was on one of his shows for his office in regards to professional development. I was like, you know what? I would love to have you as a guest on Positive Philter. So before we get in this topic, Joe, give the listeners a little bit of an introduction of who you are.
Sure. And first of all, thank you for having me on tonight. I'm excited to be here. I know when we first had our initial conversation, I was like, yeah, let's do this. You know, this would be a good time. So I'm excited to be here and excited to have this conversation. So, as you mentioned, I'm a career professional, been pretty much my entire career in higher ed has been career services with the exception of about 8 months. So it's kind of all I've done really. And we're both part of the organization Eastern ACE, which has been fantastic to me to develop professionally. Personally, I live, born and raised, grew up just north of Boston, still live north of Boston now, and married, 2 boys. And this is it. Like, it's just a crazy life right now.
Yeah. And we're definitely, I mean, that's probably what the topic is. I know we connected earlier about, career development. I can't remember. I think my topic was like networking or something like that.
It was networking. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing. But I was like, you know what? I think we could expand upon that, but like bring our personal experiences. You said the father of 2 boys. So let's just, read the room. How has COVID been as a working father for you? And I think that's what we're going to focus on today. But how is it? It's like this is going to be the most blanketed question first, and then we'll dive into some things. But how is it balancing that work-life balance as a father and a full-time employee?
Yeah, I would say the one word I would use to describe it is crazy. Because, I think that when you look at it from a perspective of I've never worked out of my house before, this was the first time I've ever been remote. You take that, and all of a sudden, everything is now just kind of melded into one thing, right? Where I typically work in my basement. If I have a break, I can run upstairs and help out with something with the kids. So in that sense, it's good where I get to spend more time with the kids. I get to see them more. But I use the word crazy because you feel like you're just going a million miles an hour, right? And I remember specifically at the beginning of all this stuff, when it was pretty much like, hey, you can't see anybody, don't have anybody come in the house, not even close family. It was basically my wife and I kind of just trading off. Okay, what time is your meeting today? And what time is mine? And we can, and okay, I'm going to come up then, you can go up then, and you come down then, and I'll go up. And it was absolutely insane. Since everything has, progressed, we've been able to kind of bring more folks in and, help us out with childcare. So that's really been helpful. We'd be lost, I think, without that. But still, it's just a world that kind of got flipped upside down, and you just kind of take it day by day. That's the best way I can describe it, just day by day.
Yeah. So I have a couple. One of the follow-up questions is, how old are the ages of your kids? Because I know I have a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old. So that's it's a different experience. And then particularly with the trade-off, similar to I'm assuming, like you said, you're both working parents. Me and my wife are both working parents. My wife is a school social worker. And so we had that trade-off mindset too. So, for the, context, what are the ages of your children?
Sure.
And what, your wife, what is she doing?
Sure. So my boys are young. My oldest, Drew, he turned 3 in November. Mm-hmm. And then my youngest, Luke, just turned 2 last week. So they're close in age and they're young. And so I think that, that has played into this as well, where, when you're that young, it's hard you can't really leave them anywhere. Right. I mean, there's kind of they need that constant supervision. So that in of itself has been part of that craziness and that challenge. Now my wife works in market research. She actually works part-time. So she does about 20 hours per week. And she started doing that after our first son was born. So it's been nice. She's been able to work out of the house. Her company's been super, super flexible with all that stuff. So in that sense, like, that has actually helped us a lot too, where, it isn't 2 full-time schedules. It's a full-time and a part-time one. And I remember what we were doing. She takes Wednesdays off. And so Thursday is typically her busiest day. So for the months, I think it was last April and May and a little bit of June, I was off on Thursdays. It was just because, okay, let's trade off this day for that day, and do what we can. So, but the thing I will say, you mentioned your oldest is 6 years old. I don't know where they are in school, but that was one of the things I think we're really fortunate is we're not having to worry about classroom stuff right now.
Yeah.
Challenging with having to watch them all the time, but at least they're not in school and having to go, in that direction too.
Yeah. I mean, I was about to say, and that's why I love to talk to other parents, especially conversations like this, is like, there's no cookie cutter experience about this, I can't, compare my experience with my ages to yours. Maybe some of the parents got high school kids and there's different levels of drama and issues there. But, I think one of the things that is unifying for all parents is this like blurred line of boundaries. Like, it's completely, regardless of the ages, like this line of being a parent and then being a full-time employee has been completely blurred.
Yes.
For you, and these are, like I said, this is just an open conversation. When you wake up in the morning, and what does your first thought go to? Does it go, it is just like a random thought that I've had. Does it automatically go to like, okay, father mode and fill in work, right? Like work is secondary. Or does it go to work first and then say, like, let me figure out how to balance the kids?
It actually, because I get up really early, it actually goes to work mode first. And that's just to organize my day.
Yeah.
I give myself a little bit of time kind of early on to get things settled. And then it turns into dad mode. And then it turns into a mixture. And, like you say, kind of like it's all combined into one. To me, like a lot of times when I was on campus, right, I'm working on campus, that was my time for work. And when I left at the end of the day, I would shut that light off and I'm not thinking about it until the next morning when I'm coming in. Right.
Oh, man.
But now you're living in it almost. Right. And so home has become work too. And so it feels like nothing ever really shuts off.
Yeah.
Right. Like I never had my work email on my phone before. And now I do.
Hey,
that was a conscious decision not to do that by right. Cause I'm like, you know what? I need to shut it off at some point. But now there'd be times where I'm like, I have to just go up with the kids. Let me just have my work email, right? Or if I wake up in the morning, let me just check it really quick, make sure there's nothing pressing before I go maybe I go work out, maybe I go take a shot, right? Whatever it is, now it's just embedded into everything. So
that's really
it's been a challenge.
I was about to say, teach me, because that joint was on my phone before this. Like, I was doing stuff and answering emails at like 11 at night anyway.
Well, that's what it is, right? I don't want to set that precedence, right? It's like I want that boundary, and I think that's part of the thing. And you tell me, I don't know in terms of your career choice going into higher ed, but part of it for me was like I wanted that work-life balance. And I think early on in my career, as a single guy that wasn't married, didn't have a family at the time, I think my thoughts were, okay, you know, this will be helpful one day when I do cross that path, and I am married, I do have kids, and so, you know, that was part of the intentionality behind it. But again, like we say, there's no blueprint for this of what's going on, right? It just kind of happened, and all of a sudden there's this pandemic, and now everything just is happening out of the house.
Well, I mean, I don't know. For me, be quite honest, when we met, and I think maybe we even overlapped, is that I kind of fell into higher ed for me, and then I wasn't really serious about my well, not say I was working, I just never saw like me being impactful. You know, I just it was just a job, check the list, all
Sure.
different positions
Sure.
until most recently, about 3 years ago, where I really found my lane, and then I was like, work. I think work actually became more of a priority to me
Right.
right before this pandemic, which I think if I had like a couple like two jobs before this, I think this pandemic would have been easier because I was already like kind of like not really as motivated, but I
Right.
went right. I screenshotted myself. Like I remember before this started, I was like 2020, I'm gonna kill it. Like I was so professional moded in that mode, like that taking off in regards to my career. But then this
Right.
pandemic hit. So I think we similar to the other situation. I think we were in different spaces in our career as well before this pandemic hit.
Right.
Mentally.
Right. Right.
So one of the things, obviously, as I think a lot of the focus, I was watching today's show, and a lot of the focus, particularly in regards to gender, like we already know there's different, societal issues, not issues, but societal roles that during COVID, there was a disproportionate effect of COVID on women in the workplace, meaning there was like a forced mass exodus on women unemployment. And I don't think there's a lot in that conversation about fathers. So I don't know, just informally, not the statistics. Have you heard like from other dads about this time affecting them?
So I have a group of, I guess, my high school buddies. That's where I'm kind of closest with, and it's funny because we all obviously graduated high school together, stayed in touch throughout college, all live relatively close, although some guys have moved out of state and stuff like that. But we've all kind of had kids around the same time. And so, there's some that are a couple of years older, a couple of years younger. And so really there's this nice mix, and we're all kind of in this together, so to speak. And, there were some, like you say, informal conversations about it. I'm trying to think, nothing like too specific or anything that really stood out that we haven't really mentioned. More about like just shifting gears and you jump in here, you jump in there, right? Like it's really the same thing. A lot of us have kind of had to experience this. Now, I know there are some of my friends who had their kids in daycare, and there were some big decisions of, do we keep them in? Do we let them continue to go? And some of them decided we're gonna take our kids out. Others were like, you know what, we're gonna take them out for a little bit, and then we're gonna have to put them back in. And so I think what we've done is we've all stayed in touch on this app. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's called Marco Polo.
Oh yeah, the video,
right?
The quick video ones, but I haven't.
Quick videos.
Yeah.
So it kind of started out as like, hey, let's just kind of keep in touch. And then, it's fun stuff for the kids. And then all of a sudden it's like adult talk and people are talking about this stuff. And it's helped, to be honest with you, because again, everybody, like you say, has their own thing. Like there's different challenges for everybody. But when you're talking about raising kids, and regardless of what age they are, a lot of those challenges become similar in nature. And so we've kind of relied on that to stay in touch and to share ideas and just, kind of talk about things.
Well, it's funny. You talked about the fatherhoods and the bond and the Marco Polo. I also I like to read, and this is where I'm coming into fatherhood and just actual being guys during COVID, was that, they said that there was a not disproportionate, but there was a large effect on male friendships during COVID, because they said that particularly sports bars, all those things. And then when it was gone, they struggled because they really didn't have like in-depth, serious conversations with their boys. And I read that article and I kind of laughed because that really kind of didn't apply to me. Like me and my best friend Hillard, I guess it's because we went through the. He'll make fun of me and talk about my haircut, but then the other moment we're talking about like, our feelings, and it's just things like, and I put that in parentheses, but the real hardcore stuff. So with that being said, did you feel that sense of like, like we don't have our normal sports to talk about, or similar to this article, similar to my experience, you and your boys were already having just real in-depth conversations before this?
As a group, that's not uncommon for us to have those types of conversations. And I'm talking going back to high school now. It doesn't happen frequently, but it certainly does. Similar to how you mentioned your best friend, one of my best friends, he's my best man at my wedding. I was his best man, that type of thing. Like someone that I like you say, I'd consider him a brother, right? Like, I mean, we're that close. It's the same thing, right? Where 1 minute we're kind of joking around and talking about the Celtics. The next minute where, we're having a serious conversation about what's happening with our kids. And, and there was a couple text messages, but, and it was like that, but it was more just kind of around support, right? Kind of being there for each other. Hey, whatever you need type of deal. But bringing it back to like that whole stigma, right? Of usually with the guys, it's more low key. It's more that talking about sports and less of the true emotional stuff, right? Which I think it makes sense, right? I mean, I think that stuff happens, but, for us, it's like, I think because of this pandemic, it's kind of forced us to talk about it more because you need that filter, right? Like you need that filter.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think the pandemic either accelerated or forced people. How about, I think we're in a very female dominated occupation, higher ed in general, and career services. So I don't know, do you get a chance to jump in and talk about the dad talk with the ladies, or you still feel like, when they're talking parenthood stuff, we kind of stay out of it? Because I'll be honest with you, I jump in. I jump in with those conversations,
Yeah, no, it's so ever since I started at Salem, our office has been really, really close. And that means we talk about personal things sometimes, right? Not like at a level that's uncomfortable, but definitely personal things. When I first started, I was the only guy in the office. Now, 7+ years later, there's other guys in the office. And so it's the folks in the office have changed. But a lot of the conversations have really stayed the same, and it's not uncommon for anybody just to kind of share things that are happening with their kids or, significant others and pets even too, right? For some folks, like it's just the way it is. And so, in that sense, I think having kind of that close knit relationship allows us that flexibility when it's like, hey, I need to take this day off because we don't have childcare, and at least, there's that appreciation there. But I mean, it's one of those things where I'll jump in too, like it's, to me, it's like, it's helpful, and I think that also, like, I know this will get away from the parenthood thing, but like building a camaraderie in the office, like that really helps, right? To be able to talk about that stuff. So it's not uncommon for even at the beginning when I was the only guy in the office. It was definitely something I still talked about. And that's another thing too, like, you're right. It is certainly more female to male in our industry, in career services as well. But that's another reason about Eastern Ace that I think has been so great, is that I've been able to really build relationships with a lot of people. And if you look at us just having this conversation now, right? Like if we weren't connected through Eastern Ace, you're in Virginia, I'm in Massachusetts, who knows, right? Like, and so it's been good, and we're able to have these types of conversations and really develop these kind of personal relationships and friendships, right? That it makes it exciting to kind of stay in touch with the organization and stuff. So,
well, I was about to say that too, because you brought it to the bigger, like you went from micro to macros. I think, particularly for me,
right.
Larger organizations at least allow me a space in a couple ways. Like, like connecting with other guys in this space, right? That's one. But then also just in general, larger too, like maybe connecting with other Black males, so like, it's been, have been helpful during this pandemic, is that not only, the technology is staying in touch with my group of male friends, my high school boys, but then also I get to meet other male professionals like you or Junior or Bob, and just a wide range of guys in Eastern Ace that's really, I could text or ask questions, but then also just in general national. So that's been really helpful. I don't know if the pandemic has exacerbated that or, like you said, forced us to have those conversations. But I do believe that, I don't know, I really believe that this has forced a lot of technology, like you said, Marco Polo. It's forced us to really like take advantage of whatever we can. We have to have to almost MacGyver our social networks. Like how can I connect with my friends? Well, I got Marco Polo or Instagram or I just got to find some way, but I'm going to make an effort, some lane to connect.
Yeah. And I think it's that human nature, right? Where you strive for that normalcy in some capacity, and no matter what it was, if it's a simple conversation, my wife and I, this past summer, were fortunate enough to go out to lunch a couple times. And I think we got out to dinner a couple times, and in a safe environment where we sat outside and, all that stuff, all the things that you're supposed to do. But I think for us, it was like, we want to be able to get away for a little bit, even if it's just getting lunch or dinner. I mean, that feeling, it was just so great, So I think that, like you mentioned, we're kind of looking at this technology stuff, right? Anything that's going to allow us to kind of hold on to general normal life, like the things that we do day to day, typically before the pandemic. I think, as humans, we kind of strive just to do that. And it's been tough. It's been an adjustment. But I think, and this will be more on the macro side, I think this allows everybody now this opportunity to really kind of reevaluate things, right? And can we utilize technology to our advantage in some instances, right? Whether it's in our work, staying connected to folks, right? One of my really good friends, he lives in California, and besides just texting a couple times a year, unless he was visiting, it was hard for us to get out there once we had kids. So this has allowed us now, Marco Polo, to see him. We've done some Zoom conversations too as a group. So, the technology has actually allowed us to almost, see each other a little bit more, given the fact that life has just gotten so crazy.
So, I know you got 2 young children and all that stuff. And I know I don't know about yours, but my wife is like, okay, you got your job and you got your kids. Like, you are actually going out of your way to do volunteer stuff that you're not getting paid for. and what she means by that is like either professional organizations like this or my fraternity or Alpha or all these things. And I don't know. I think my only defense is, I don't even know. Like, I think I just kind of, I don't really have a defense really. I think my defense was like, well, they're, even though I'm not getting paid, it's contributing to my career. It's making me better. I try to I ain't gonna lie, I BS'd it, but in actuality, I think, if I really went down to it, regardless if when we say these organizations give us opportunities to enhance our profession, for me, if I really, really wanted to be completely honest, it was just another way, as I said earlier, to connect with people. And so I don't know. What is your wife been saying? Like, when you're like, okay, I got Eastern Ace things, because I know you're very involved.
Right.
You're not getting paid. How do you defend that?
So she's very supportive of it. I try to be as open as possible with things, right? Especially when I was going to the conference, hey, listen, this is when it's coming up and all that stuff. So try to plan ahead and be respectful of all that stuff. For her, I think she gets why I do it, and so I know we've had this conversation you and I before, you're much more extroverted than I am. And so for me, going to networking events was always a challenge. And I'm a career counselor, talking about networking is what I do. I teach it. But actually doing it was kind of a challenge. Eastern Ace was really the first place I actually felt like a connection with some folks. I didn't feel like I was just a number at a conference. And that really is what has inspired me to kind of get involved in everything. And like you say, it's a way to connect. So yeah, part of me is like, I love to just see people. Even though it's a once a year thing, like I'm like, yeah, I can't wait to go out to dinner. I can't wait to have a couple drinks with some of these guys and girls, right? Whoever. And then part of me, you're right. Like there's this professional development element to it. And I look at it from, okay, I probably built some skills. I've definitely gotten ideas. I've shared ideas with people. So there's definitely the professional approach to it as well. So it's a nice combination, I think. And I know what you're saying, like, yeah, like I'm not getting paid to do this. It's a lot of time. There are times, especially when you're involved in these committees, right? Where I'm like, what am I doing? Right. But I really do enjoy the work because I know how much I value my experience within the organization. And I think others see it in the same way. You mentioned Junior, Junior's somebody that he and I connected at my first conference. We've done presentations together for other organizations. Like it's been great. And a bunch of other folks, Jill, who's our incoming president, she's the one that really was like, hey, Joe Santacroce wants to get involved with Eastern Ace. And there's been a lot of other folks too. I'm being remiss right now because I'm not mentioning everybody, but I just give you two examples, right, of just folks who have been so helpful to me in my own professional growth that have kind of gotten me out of that shell, if you will.
Yeah. So one of the things I was thinking about, so you were able to defend it. And you see me, I'm letting my dog out. I don't know. You defended it better than I did. Talking about your personality and how much it meant to you. My wife's still saying I'm doing way too much. But one of the things too, I ain't gonna lie, and this is something I talked to my mentor about, is that going into the pandemic, I took on way too much, and so this year is going to be a year of reprioritization. I quite honestly had said no to a lot of new things, these roles, such as like people turning down things, because I definitely ain't gonna lie, I definitely burned out around the fall, right? Like,
okay.
Over the summer, right when we're going into the pandemic, is like that wave where you can accept everything, like new roles. I call it new role season, right? Like everything is nominations and all that stuff is in the spring for the incoming year. So I literally said yes to everything over the summer 2020. Right. Went into the summer. I think, be honest with you, work was really low in the summer. I was like, I can handle all this. Then the fall semester hits, and then it was like, nope. Philip Wilkerson, you took on all these things during a low period, so you got tricked. You tricked yourself, and I burned out. I ain't gonna lie. So, and I had to say, I'm gonna say no a lot of things this coming summer. Refocus, because I don't want to. Definitely, the top roles is father. Or actually, husband first to me, husband, father, then work, and then all these extracurricular things. Right. And I was really not doing so well with the father husband taking on so much. So that's a long roundabout way to say is like, did you feel like you were having struggles with that prioritization, or you're ripping and running?
Not so much, because I think I've taken on more recently in my professional life, but I think I've always been the one that's been reluctant to. I've been a little bit less of a risk taker, and that's probably affected me a little bit. And like I said, I'm much more introverted. I try to be as intentional as possible with what I'm doing. And sometimes I need to get myself out of my comfort zone, so in that sense, no, but what I did find is, going into the fall semester, when things that did get busier, I start second guessing myself. Am I spending enough time? Am I making sure that I'm prioritizing everything? And I think I was, but I think I just put a lot of pressure on myself. And for whatever reason, I think it's because, I strive to be the best at everything, right? Like I want to make sure whatever it is that I'm doing, I'm giving 110% all the time. And I think there's times where you have to say, take a step back, right? And maybe it's say no, maybe it's trust somebody else, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And just be, communicating about it and staying open about things. Like you kind of gave your list, like for sure, family for me, I'll combine it, right? Wife, kids, like that's definitely number one, like no question about it. And then, yeah, like you say, then you go into that work thing, and everything else that kind of falls after it. But, I think I've done a pretty good job of it. There's probably been days and weeks where it's been worse than others. But we try the best we can, and, I think when you have that mentality of keeping family here first, right, then that has to be your focal point for everything that you do, right? And say, okay, maybe I am taking on too much. Maybe I need to take a little bit of a step back here. And it's okay to do that, right? And like it happens. I think I've gotten to a point where, I'm stressing myself out a little bit with things, but it's not enough that I think it's affecting my personal life.
Okay.
Okay. So, and if I get to that point, then it's time to reevaluate, right? And say, what do I need to maybe let go of, right? In order to do that.
And that's what I got to. I had to do that.
Yeah.
Like, I did like even as physical as an exercise of listing it out on a piece of paper, all the roles.
Right.
And I was like, wow, that's a lot. And I had to see it on a piece of paper. And then I literally had to like really face it. And I have that, I'll send it. I took a picture of it, sent it to my mentor. And she's like, Philip, like you're running too fast. You're going to burn out. And then I think I'm the same way where I try to give 100 and something, 110. But then I realized I was only giving like 70,
Yeah, right.
And then I was like, man, that's not a reflection of who I am. And so I was like,
right.
So I definitely don't want people to think that I'm 70% effort. That's my normal.
Of course.
So I'd rather let go of things that are slacking and then focus on things I can excel at. So.
Right. You prioritize it, like I'll give you an example with Eastern Ace too. So my second year co-chairing programming, I know next year I'm not co-chairing programming. It's so much. And I think that I want to stay involved in the organization. I'd like to continue to do that. But I think I need to find a role that's less intensive. And that'll be my approach kind of going into it, and it's because I know the time that it takes, the effort that it takes, and, given all the craziness that's been happening with the pandemic, that, going to virtual and all that stuff has just added more to the plate. I think at this point I'm like, okay, it's been 2 years. It's time to change it up a little bit for something different. And I think I need to just, slow it down a little bit for a year, catch my breath, so to speak.
Well, I was thinking about that too. And another thing that I don't know, my boss told me, which shout out to her, Tracy. She would actually check me and say, I don't think you should do that. Why don't you give it to someone else? Pass the blessing. And then I realized, all right. So I started doing this new strategy where, like, instead of just saying no, I try to find someone to replace me. And so I put someone else on, and then I get credit. I get credit for at least one introducing someone else. That person that gets to do it says, wow, Philip, thank you for putting me on. And then the other person was like, thank you for not just saying no and flat out leaving me to scramble. You at least gave me a good person to follow up with. So that's going to be kind of my mindset too, where with that list I told you of a lot of no's, I'm not going to just say flat out no. I'm going to say no, but how about, and have a couple people that I think.
Sure. Let me ask you this though. Do you think that your reluctancy around that was because of trust? And the reason I ask that, for me, like, whether that means delegating something, a task in work, something else like that, for me, I'm always like, I need to trust more, right? Like, I can't control everything. I need to get somebody, there are other folks that can do this job, right? And so I'm okay if I do ask to delegate that stuff. And maybe that's not an apples to apples of what you're describing, but
no, it's very close.
Well, it's kind of what I heard, right?
So, no, I mean, my rationale is different, but there is an intrinsic thing. Like yours might be control, and I want to have control over it, do it my way. Mine was more like, wow, like it's an ego thing. Like
Okay.
I'm saying yes to all these things because I've never been asked before, like it made me feel good.
Sure.
It felt like an honor to be asked. Like they asked me, I can do it. But then I realized like, no, someone else can do it too. And I think it really came from a place of insecurity, wow, like as I said earlier, I was going into a year where I'm starting to feel more confident in my career and my abilities, that I was like, yeah, I can do this. Yeah, I can do this. Yeah, I can do this. And then I realized that like, no, like it still feels good to be asked, but then at the same time, they can ask someone else.
Of
And
course.
and so I think it was more for yours is more control. Mine was more like insecurity and ego, like I gotta do it. They asked me. Like they asked me. They asked Philip. They didn't ask someone else.
Of course. Of course.
And
I think that's part of our professional growth, isn't it? To be like, hey, you know what? I mean, it's great that we're being asked to do this, but maybe if there's not enough time, maybe you're right. Like maybe I need to trust a little bit more, right? Like lose a little bit of that control, and that's okay. And somebody else will get it done. And like you say, in your case, it's like, hey, they asked me, but I have all these other things that I know I have to do. Yeah, I'm okay to kind of pass this along to somebody else. So that to me, I look at it as it's our professional development, professional growth.
Well, I think I agree with that. I think one of the things that COVID has done, and maybe this is, I think it's put a large mirror on any kinks that we may have had. So for instance, kinks in regards to, like being a good person of time management. COVID, it's like, okay, well, this pandemic is like, well, then you're gonna have to force yourself to be better at time management. I'm not good at keeping in touch with people. Okay, well, we're gonna put you in a super isolating situation and force you to go outside your comfort zone and connect with people because you're gonna be very lonely. So I feel like anything that you might have needed to work on before March 2020. It's forced you to do it. And if you don't, then it just sucks. Like you got worse. Like it got worse, right? Like your time management, your time management got worse.
But you're right. Yeah, you're 100% right about that. Like especially the staying in touch thing. Like I am not good about that. I will completely admit that. Where, and it's kind of forced you to be like, let me text somebody, see what's going on, and even like I used to work at before I was at Salem State, I was at Wentworth and had a good group of friends from Wentworth, coworkers, obviously, but they become friends. And we used to kind of see each other maybe like once or twice a year type of thing, where everybody kind of go out to dinner or something or go out to lunch, and hadn't done that in a while. And so one of the guys who was really, really good about keeping in touch with everybody set up some Zoom calls, and that led to some other smaller Zoom sessions. And I'm like, this is so good just to connect with people. And so you're right. It's kind of forced us, especially, right, to come out of that comfort zone and say, let's prioritize what really is important here. Right. And like, let's make sure we can focus in on the things that we need to be focusing on, because if we don't, we're going to feel stuck and we're going to feel,
So I got one thing to think about, like on the flip side, those natural skills,
Yes.
Natural skills, which ones have actually started to flourish during COVID?
Okay.
Like one was like, yo, I was already kind of good at this before COVID, and then you got better at it, or you got to shine at it during COVID. Like which one for you?
So I think for me, well, I'll start with what have I been good at? I've always been good at organizational skills. Mm-hmm. This has really forced me to be organized and prioritize and all that stuff. So I think that has helped to really accentuate that. I think I've done a really good job of it, particularly when we're talking about balancing work and home life, right? Mm-hmm. What I think has been a new skill, or maybe a further developed skill, mm-hmm. has been adaptability. I've always been one who's, kind of, I don't want to say stuck in my ways with everything, but maybe like reluctant to kind of step out of that. Right. And I think COVID has forced adaptability on me so much that I've just had to make changes and do things differently. And I think because of that, I've really enhanced the ability to be adaptable. That's kind of where I would go with it. What do you think?
I was about to say, like, the one for me was I always actually was a really good initiator with like friends and text.
Okay.
And so I was able to channel that. Like, I started a monthly Zoom call with all the Black male faculty staff.
Cool.
And I just like said, hey, come, here's the link, come and not. And then it started growing and growing. And I've done it consistently once a month since July. And it even got the notice of the president of Mason, who's
awesome.
Who's a Black male, and was like, I don't know, like, that's pretty organized. And I didn't. Everyone was like, thank you for your leadership, Philip. I was like, I didn't do any leadership. I just
set up a Zoom call.
I set up a Zoom call. And talked about and had a group, but I was like, I was always pretty good at corralling people, birthday parties. But I think I was doing it not because I was good at corralling. I was like, I'm just a social person. So I just like getting people together. So
it's in your nature, right? It's like, that was because you're much more extroverted, Like I said, I know we've talked about that before. I'm much more introverted. So for me, it was like, I've always kind of, not been that way. but it's forced me to be like, hey, let's get together, let's connect, and let's set this up. And it's been good.
I think the other one, like you said, growing skill. I think the growing skill was organization. Like, I'm writing notes now of our podcast. I'm definitely getting slowly better at calendar. Like my calendar day, I feel it's a morning briefing with my wife. Like, I feel like we're in the war room, and we're like, what you got today? What you got today? And we're literally looking at our calendars. And so I think me and my wife have gotten we have days where I like forgot that she had something and I forgot, whatever, but we have been better in sync with, like, she knows that like Sunday nights and Wednesday nights is my podcast night.
Right.
And that's because we set a structure. And so we've gotten better with that.
Yeah. And it's almost like you have a new respect for each other. Right. Because like our work environments have never crossed paths. I mean, in the same time, I'm saying, right? Like, we've always had our professional lives, but I would be going to work and then coming home. And then, so that was the only, part of it, where now it's like, it's embedded into our lives. And I think we've, had to do that. We've been forced to do it. Kind of like what you say, you have like that initial conversation in the morning. That's a lot of times what we're doing. Are you busy today? What time do you definitely have to, and it's, and you figure it out on the fly sometimes, right? Unless it's like a big thing and we've already talked about it, but, okay, great. I can come up and make lunch, well, I know you're on a call at noon. Like, I'm going to come up and make lunch for the kids and that'll be it.
Yeah. Now we definitely, I don't know. We had somewhere was like, yo, which one of your meetings can you be camera off? And like, you have a meeting today. Is it a meeting or like you one where like, you need to do a lot of talking. And that's like, we're like, okay. And like,
right.
My wife is a social worker. She's like, yo, this is super confidential. Close the door. The kids can't bust in and interrupt me. Like, this is serious. Okay. Right. And I'm like, me, like, I'm like this, like, I have to, at all costs, do not let the kids interrupt my wife during this. So we have to like be very transparent. And I love what you said earlier, is that we have enough respect. We have a more of a respect, but I've actually, during this time, I think I know I feel like I know more what my wife does for work.
Yes.
Like what a meeting is, what her, like, I already knew a little bit about her social work role in schools, but now I actually know about, what kind of meetings she's sitting on. I feel like I know her coworkers more. She'd be saying names. I'm like, oh yeah, like, I'd be like knowing more about the lingo, about her job, which
absolutely.
I think I have a new appreciation once this is over with. Like,
agreed.
I know her boss. I know all that stuff now. So.
And I'll say this to you too. So not only is there a new appreciation for that stuff and have I learned more about it, as a career person, there's like this genuine kind of curiosity around it. And I've actually referred some students, not to my wife, but I've referred them to what she does. Psychology majors. I'm like, you ever thought about market research? And I actually had a student that I met with, she's like, I'm going to look into that a little bit more, and I gave her some names of companies and stuff. And it's funny. So, there's like this genuine, like husband, wife curiosity, but, I guess, it kind of blends in with, again, the world we're living in. Right. And I take it into my work too. So,
well, I mean,
interesting.
Well, I do that too. Also, like if I know a kid is interested in social work, and it's not everyone and their mama, but like some kids, I'll set them up with an informational interview with my wife.
There you go.
And ask, you can ask her questions about the field and grad school,
right.
because you got to go to grad school, and she's done that. She's had some informational interviews with people.
It's awesome. Yeah. Yeah,
but not everyone. I know, because she's like, I got to work now. So like
yeah, I know. That's what it is. The timing of things, right? Right. Yeah.
So we're at a part of the show. I mean, this is great. I love this conversation about working dads. We touched on a bunch of different things. Obviously, you're still employed. I'm still employed. So we must be doing something right. So this is the part of the show called Shot for Shot, where you get to ask me a random question. I get to ask you a random question, whatever. Do you want to go first? I'll go first.
I have a good one, but why don't you go first?
Okay, so Boston through and through. You know what I'm saying? I think this is a kind of a softball one, so I might ask two. Was you hurt when Brady won another Super Bowl with someone else?
So it's so funny you asked that question. So I am Boston through and through, but I am not a Patriots fan.
Oh, okay. Which one?
Yeah, so I'm not a Tom Brady fan either. So I was not rooting for him, but yeah, it's weird. Like I'm much more of a hockey and basketball as opposed to football and baseball. The games have changed, I think, since, I appreciate more defense in football, and I feel like that's kind of gone away. So for me, it's more kind of individual players and stuff like that. And so, yeah, it actually didn't bother me one bit.
Okay, all right, it's good, because he's not my GOAT. My favorite player, my favorite quarterback of all time is Peyton Manning. So here's my second.
I like Manning. But I would say, like, in terms of players, Barry Sanders is my guy. So.
Oh, Barry Sanders is my favorite player of all time.
Favorite player of all time, easily.
Oh, yeah. I love it. Well, we got that vibe because I have his jersey.
It's my guy.
Jersey.
Oh, me too. I
have a card. So here's my question. Then. All right. So COVID has affected a lot of sports, but so it is a sports. Yeah. What is your favorite sport, and what is going to be one of the first sporting venues that you're going to try to go to once this pandemic is over? You got to get a ticket and go to the game. Which one?
Yep. So my favorite sport to watch is hockey, and my favorite team is the Bruins. And so I think that would probably be my thing. If going to a game at some point, that would be the number one thing on my list, and I think that, close behind that would be the Celtics, so, and they both play in the same building. So Bruins or Celtics, one of those games I think is really ideal to me.
I love it. Do you have a favorite, Celtic Bruin memory?
I do for sure. I would say for the Celtics, no question about it, when they won the championship in 2008, just because of all the things that led up to it. And Paul Pierce is my all-time favorite Celtic, but when they got Kevin Garnett, it changed the game. And I'll never forget driving into work that day, the talk of Kevin Garnett. I couldn't believe it. And when it actually happened, it was amazing. Actually, I bought tickets to opening night that year. I called my buddy. I said, "Hey, we're going to this game." And so that, call it when they got him or just winning the championship that year. For the Bruins, it was winning the Stanley Cup, but I actually got to go to Game 6 of the Cup Finals. And it is easily the greatest sports memory of my life. I don't think anything will ever come close to that unless I'm able to see them win the cup in the same building. It was incredible. Just the atmosphere, you never experienced anything like it. So, those are two of my strong ones.
Dang, that's awesome. And you are off the top of your head. I wish I could say. Oh, yeah. I got the Washington Football Club, and I don't have any happy.
I remember way back in the day. Was it 91, 92?
Yeah. Okay. I was right? I remember watching this.
I was a kid.
I was a kid. I was watching that, but Talking about actually going to a venue, all I have is heartbreak and sadness. And going to
well, that's the thing. People think like Boston sports, because they've had a lot of success, that it's all been that way. It has not been like that forever. Trust me, I felt a lot of heartbreak, more heartbreak than I think I want to. So I know what that's like, believe me.
Yeah. Okay, so what's your question for me?
All right, so it's on the lines of sports too. And I've asked this question to a couple people, and I'm curious to get your answer to it. Who do you think is the coolest athlete of all time? And I have my answer, but I'm curious to know who you think is.
Like coolest, like someone I would want to hang out with?
Coolest that just epitomized, like to have that swagger that you're like, man, that person is just so cool, And I think you'll see where I'm going when I give you my answer.
Well, actually, like actual personality. And like
could be that, yeah.
All right, so here I got two answers because it depends on if you think wrestling is fake or not. So if it's wrestling,
I'll go with
consider wrestling. If you consider wrestling a sport, which they do sometimes, then it's The Rock. Like The Rock is awesome. I love him. / Stone Cold, both of those two.
Sure.
Like The Rock and Stone Cold. If it's talking about professional sports, like other sports, then I'm going with Deion Sanders.
Oh, okay.
And the reason why is like legit. If you watch anything, he was he monetarized his swag, right? Like
he did.
He became prime time, and he had like outfits, and he would have performances, and he had a celebrations like that was like legit. Like he made a celebration, like he did a little thing, like the little high step.
Oh, I remember, into the end zone, of course.
To the end zone, and so I mean I'm not saying athletically gifted. I'm talking about you're talking about cool and swag.
Exactly.
I think the originator definitely. Well, okay. There's one more person in regards to that too. I would say one more. I got wrestling, the fake one, right? So I got The Rock and Stone Cold. I got football, and then just in general of just like being a great speaker was Muhammad Ali.
Okay.
Because Muhammad Ali, if you just historically, man, like I watch videos of him talking, and he just like, it was crazy. Like he would just talk big, right? Like about himself, but then he didn't suck. Right. He literally was an excellent boxer. But just he would rhyme. He would get in his opponent's heads. He would just. I watched interviews where he like would mix like actual social justice issues, like I don't want to fight.
Huge about that stuff. Yeah. So I mean, Ali to me is like just culturally. I don't know if there's ever been an athlete that has been that way, that has gotten to that type of status. I mean,
I don't think so.
In terms of greatness at your sport, and then the cultural things too, right? The social elements to all that stuff. I don't know if there's been anybody. I mean, maybe LeBron is at that point right now, but I don't know if he.
But okay, the only difference, LeBron because of social media, LeBron because of reach, but as a straight, but I would say that not say the edge, and it's obviously tomato. We can't really put people's experiences, but I would say this though, but being a speaker and actually like talking as like no one can talk like Muhammad Ali.
True, agreed.
Like he would just he was like a public speaker. Like he was legit.
Yeah.
Like every time he talked was like a TED talk. You know what I'm saying?
Right. No, it's true. It's true. It's true.
So I think minus all that, I just thought about it in my head, Muhammad Ali, give it to him.
Good.
The GOAT of coolness, swag, athletic prowess.
Okay. I like that.
Iconic, being an icon.
Yeah,
Muhammad Ali.
See, for me, because I'm like, I look at it just from the perspective of the swag and the cool, and like, I want to be this guy. Ken Griffey Jr. for me is the coolest athlete. I mean, I just remember like in the home run derbies, the backwards hat, like, I mean, the guy was just different, and like, and I think, as a kid growing up in the 90s, like there were like a few people that you idolized, and I think Deion's one of those too for some folks, right?
He had the chain and the
he had some of it, but to me it was Griffey. Like I wanted to be Ken Griffey Jr. But I just think his entire, like, he was just so naturally gifted at what he did, and he made it look so easy. Yeah. But there was a little bit of that swag involved with it, and so that's why to me that would be my answer.
Well, I think I agree. Ken Griffey was really cool. I think another thing that makes these athletes, and we think about personal branding and stuff, is that like he made a brand. Like he had his shoes, he had his own shoes.
Yeah.
Remember, he had his own video game. Like he was.
Of course, I mean, I played it every day.
And so, I don't know if that's just a natural coolness or like maybe your wife could do some market research where someone, I'm saying they tap into this guy and say, this guy got it. He got whatever it is.
Right.
Build a whole brand around it and they do it. And I think, the thing about what like those guys did in the 90s, like think about how big they would be now.
Nowadays, I know. It was before it all. Right.
With as much reach as they could have. They just had TV and cable, and
that's it.
But
that's it.
Add a phone and a social media where they also share their own voice, and then look at how crazy that could be. But
sure.
Yeah, Griffey was cool. Now you say Griffey was cool. I remember the video.
You see where I'm going with it? You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, it's just and he was like the guy that like it was after the best swing anyone's ever seen, right? And I think with all the injuries, if he wasn't injured as much, you're talking about maybe the best baseball player ever to live. I mean, I think he's in the he could have been in that conversation. I think he could have been in that conversation if he didn't get hurt. I mean, what they call him, the natural, right? Like
yeah. And his dad was good too.
So that was good too. Yeah.
So, and I think the last thing to say about all these athletes, and I think the thing I love the most about all this stuff, as we say, swag and natural athletic ability, but then behind the scenes, we know the stories that these guys worked incredibly hard. Like Muhammad Ali, like everyone thinks like he's smooth, but if he like trained like crazy. He had a work ethic like crazy. I know these.
It's insane what these guys do.
I know it's fake, but the wrestlers like The Rock works out more than anyone ever.
Oh yeah, I've read his like diet plans. It's crazy.
Who else? Ken Griffey. I know. Talking about he had an effortless bat, but he probably took like 1,000 swings before
he had to have. Yeah.
So I think that's great.
It is. See, that's the thing is like, you don't realize, I think that's what we appreciate now, right? Is like how hard those guys work. We don't realize that when you're a kid, you're just like, man, they're just so good. That's it.
Oh, I'm about to go back in that rabbit hole. I'm about to look at some King Griffey highlights.
Got to go back and look at the highlights. Watch him run up the wall. Watch him run up the wall a couple of times. Make those catches. It's insane.
Do you remember when he was in a movie? I can't remember a movie. Was it like?
Yes, I do.
It wasn't Angels in the Outfield. It was one of those 90s.
It was Little Big League. Little Big.
Yes. Yes.
And actually that was it too. Remember he hit the home run and like that was it.
Yes. So, I knew he was in a movie. Like his brand. He was in movies. He was in everything.
Everywhere. I mean, a poster on my wall. Like, I mean, I know I'm like one of probably millions to say that, but I mean, I just, every day playing outside, I'm like, Griffey, that's who I want him to be.
Yeah, I love it. Well, that was great. Now you make me want to be very nostalgic about 90s sports because that was iconic. I remember having baseball. I got Griffey. I got some baseball cards. I have the cards. I'll hold on to those things. This has been great. I'm really excited. Thank you for being on the show. This is the part of the show called Shout Outs and Plugs. Shout out whoever you want to show love to. And then plugs. Plugs are anything that you want to plug, obviously. And I'll put it in show notes. I'll make sure, whoever, follow me, whatever, all those things. So the stage is set. Shout out some plugs.
All right. So the first shout out, so go to my wife and my two boys. And then I think because we connected through a professional place, I'll say shout out to my coworkers, shout out to and a lot of the Eastern Ace folks who have helped me along the way professionally. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. And what was the second part? I'm sorry.
Plugs, whatever you want people
plugs,
to follow you or whatever you're working on.
So the thing for me on social media is like, if you want to follow me on Twitter, you're going to get a lot of stuff about sports, a little bit about movies. It doesn't. I don't do much with the career stuff in that space, but drop a line. You want to talk 90s sports. You want to talk anything like that. I'm down for it. And then too, I think just I'll go back to professionally too. Like, it's important to get involved, and I think that special plug for our organization. If you're in the career space and you're listening to this right now and you're not involved, highly recommend it. A lot of great folks in it, and a lot of opportunity there too. So I'll do a little plug for our friends at Eastern Ace.
There you go, and I'll put them. They know where to find it. So Joe, this has been great. Thank you so much for being on our show. For the listeners, if you like this episode, please share it with your family and friends. You can also drop a hotline, which is 571-336-6560. That's 571-336-6560. Spreading positivity is a movement, and we're out. Thank you for listening to Positive Philter, a podcast that focuses on family, friends, career, with a little self-help along the way. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your family and friends, and like the Facebook page, Spreading Positivity a Movement. Thanks for listening.